Hi, it's Richard here from Intelligent Advisor IT Consulting with another in our long-running series about the example projects that are provided with Oracle Policy Modeling. This week we kind of hit the midpoint. I think alphabetically and numerically this is the middle of the example projects pack. So we've done really well, and we're going to be talking today about the Loan Advisor project. The Loan Advisor project is one of my personal favorites amongst the example projects for reasons that I hope will become clear in this short walkthrough. So what does the Loan Advisor have in store for us? Well, as the name probably suggests to you, this is all about your finances. This is all about wanting to apply for one of three types of loan: a car loan, a house loan, or a general loan. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to provide information about the money that you want to borrow and your capability to then pay it back. So we'll need to know about your earnings, we'll need to know about your past history, we'll need to know a little bit more about you, your age, and whether you're employed and so on. And we'll also need to know the kind of loan that you're looking for. Is it 5-year, 10-year, and so on. So as you can tell, the interview is very tightly integrated into this process of getting you a loan. And therefore, in the final parts, you can see we have two screens here that are potential conclusions to our interview. One is bad news, and one is good news. Well, it depends on your point of view, I suppose, but one is you are not approved, and the other one is you are approved, and they're carbon copies of each other with a few small changes. So the interview itself is well worth your attention, especially because if you look carefully on the Your Loan Options page, down at the bottom here, you'll see a couple of read-only controls that talk about a custom graph. And if you've been watching our series on JavaScript extensions, you will know that this project has a pie chart in it. And if you want to learn about how to make that pie chart do different things or how to change it into something else, then I recommend if you check out the description of this video, there's a couple of links to our series about JavaScript extensions. Anyway, back to this project. So the project is basically broken down into this data model, and I want you to take a quick look at that data model. So there's your assets, your income sources, and your liabilities, basically the pluses and the minuses. And then we have the inferred entity called the payment. So not only is this a nice entity model, it also has a great example of what is known as a iterative inferred entity. So it's a little bit of, if you're coming to Intelligent Advisor and you're quite new to it, it's quite an interesting but quite advanced concept, is that we will infer the existence of payments based on the amount that you want to pay, that you want to borrow. And let's say you want to borrow $100 and you are going to pay back $10 a month, but you're also going to be paying interest. So on the first month, you'll have a balance of minus 100. And then you'll pay back 10, so you'll be down to minus 90, but then the interest will kick in, which will take it back up again to about 92 or $93, depending on the interest rate. Then we'll go around another month, and you'll go down from 93 to 83, but then you'll have more interest that'll kick in, that'll take you back to 85, and so on and so on and so on, until eventually you will reach 0. So the inferred iterative entity will basically instantiate a list of rows that will describe to you how you'll get from 100 down to 0. And it will happen in the space of just two rules. The first rule creates the first payment, where we consider that you've paid off 0, and then we will iterate through the next payments until you reach 0 or until you reach the number of months that you specified. And there'll also be a limit to say that you can only go, I think it's to 36 months. So it's a very clever little feature, and it's something that is also documented in the online help, and I'll put a link in the description so you can find that too. And we've covered it in quite some detail on the intelligentadvisor.com website, so you'll find a link to that article as well. It was part of our series about relations, because relations and entities are what makes this work. So Now that we've discussed briefly the data model, what about the rules? Well, we have it nicely done here. You can see broken up by theme. We have the eligibility rules. So are you eligible for a loan in the first place? So if you're going to make changes to this project, the eligibility is a good place to start, because you could begin to say that there were new criteria to be eligible for a loan. And basically you can see that it's a hierarchy. There's a main rule here. And then underneath, you'll find reference to each one of these conditions. So let's take a look at the customer meets the minimum eligibility requirements. And you can see that it's basically right under here. There we go. So this and this are the same basic construct. So this is the summary and this is the detail. You have to be over the minimum age for a loan approval, and you have to either be a resident of the country or we waive the residency tests. We have to find out if we're going to add a rule to say when we waive the residency tests. And you've requested a loan within the thresholds. You haven't asked for $1 gazillion. So there's a minimum and maximum loan amount. So that's very important. So you could easily start playing with the maximum loan amount, because you can see here the minimum is set in the thresholds document to 5,000. So you could change those and immediately rerun the interview and show your audience that you're demoing to just that how easy it was to change the thresholds. Then we'll talk about loan serviceability, which is the second one here, which is basically, are you able to service the loan? Do you have a job? Have you had a job for at least 2 years? Is the loan to value ratio below or equal to the maximum loan to value ratio? Again, the loan to value ratio maximum is set to 95, and so on and so on and so on. So you could easily customize these. And you can see here that the customer's earnings are sufficient to repay the loan is set at being basically your monthly income must be greater than at least 1.5 times the monthly payment, so that you have enough money for your rent and your transport and what have you. So again, these are all great targets to be modified, validated, and demonstrated to your audience just how easy it is to use Intelligent Advisor. And they're also good opportunities to learn. And if you're offering security, well, obviously we need to know what your net worth is, plus how much money, what is the security that you're offering. Perhaps it's the purchase, you're offering a car or a house. So these are all fairly straightforward eligibility rules. We just talked about threshold. The interview rules, as you'd expect, they're all to do with the interview procedure itself. So if you like, the rendering of the interview. So it's a lot of things about what we're going to display, how we're going to display it, what are the default values, and so forth. And finally, we've got things like the loan repayments, which is where we'll find the iterative inferred entity construct with the relationship that I mentioned. There we are. That's the basic mechanism. Obviously, it doesn't speak to you if you've never seen one before, but you can probably get the gist of it by looking at first and next, that we're going to iterate through a set of payments until hopefully we reach 0. And then we have the calculation of your payment balance based on that. As you can see, the payment balance looks at not just the payment, but looks at the previous payment. So we know that if we're on, let's say, month 4, we've got to go back and look at month 3 to know what the balance is going into month 4, and so on. And all of these are really great opportunities for learning about how to perform simple calculations. You can see we have functions in here like minimum, we have working out the interest amount, and probably 20 minutes spent in here is worth an hour of reading the documentation and learning about functions. So what else do we have to offer you in the Loan Advisor? Well, of course, in the Loan Advisor, the graphical user interface is quite well thought out, and indeed they've spent quite a lot of effort to make this an attractive user interface, I think. You'll notice that on the front page we have this thing called the liability type, which is the loan type, which is essentially what kind of loan do you want to have. So we have car, home, or investment, and that drives into an attribute called the loan type. And then the loan type is used to calculate the default purchase price. And if you're going to do some work on the user interface, or if you're going to use this as a learning opportunity, this is probably the first place you would start. You would say to yourself, well, if I was to go to the value list and add another another loan type, let's choose burger, and then create yourself or go find yourself some images to use. following the same model that they have, so that you can add further options, and then of course you can go into the default purchase price and set the default purchase price for burgers. And we'll say down here is well, a little more modest, let's say 500 on burgers. And from that simple modification, you can then begin to use it to understand how the interview actually works. So as you can see, the default is 0. We'll add in a loan type. We can see the purchase price is defaulted in with a default of 20% of the purchase price being for the down payment. So we can see that in here. The down payment is the purchase price minus the down payment. So the default down payment amount is the purchase price times, well, as you can see, 20% of the original purchase price. So if burgers were 500, then the default down payment amount is 100. And then we can work our way through the graphical user interface. And as I mentioned earlier, there is one particularly interesting thing in this interview is this, the custom chart or custom pie chart based around a JavaScript extension. So a JavaScript extension really is beyond the scope of this class. However, it's well worth imagining that you could spend some time learning about JavaScript extensions, and they're covered in a series we already have. But to put it simply, this is pure JavaScript and pure kind of HTML and web skills with a little bit of Intelligent Advisor tacked on. If we go to the second screen, which is where we have the item here. So these two items are completely are not rendered in this way. They're rendered using a custom chart, which you can find out in Styles, Custom Files. And this particular pie chart uses a very manual way of creating a chart. Very effective, but very manual. As you can see, it's pure JavaScript, and it's using scalable vector graphics to essentially draw a SVG pie chart. There are many other ways of doing this, not all of which require massive amounts of JavaScript knowledge, and we'll talk about that in some of the videos that are linked in the description. And we'll just go back through our interview and finish off the interview. Do we have any assets? So you'll recall earlier when we looked and what do I own? Sorry, what do I owe? You recall earlier when we discussed the data model, there were three standard entities, which were specifically your assets, any debts you had, and now any earnings you have. And as you can see at the moment, according to the details, I'm not eligible for a loan for burgers because the customer doesn't meet the minimum eligibility. And the reason I didn't make it is because the minimum loan amount of the bank is 5,000. So in this case, it's not that I've asked for a lot of money, but there's a minimum loan amount which is stopping me getting it. So it might be an interesting one to consider. Well, that's a very useful explanation to understand why I've been refused. So what about this minimum loan? We could go back to our data and we could go find the bank's minimum loan amount. And we can see that the bank's minimum loan amount is 5,000. And of course, you've probably seen where I'm going with this, is I'm just going to pull that out of here for a minute. and make a bit of space to do this because otherwise I'll get stuck. We'll do something like the bank's minimum loan amount. We'll put it in a rule table now, and we'll say, okay, the bank's minimum loan is 5,000 unless, and we'll use the rule assistant for this, the loan type equals burger. So if you're looking for burgers, you get a minimum loan type of 400. Otherwise, for everyone else, it's 5,000. So now I can return to my interview. I can apply the changes. I'll fill in all the other items. And I'm approved for the loan. As you can see, the loan amount is 400 and I have 6%. So now I'm eligible for my burger loan and I can go and contact the bank and get my loan sorted out. So all in all, the Loan Advisor is one of the best projects for learning the mechanics of doing standard mathematical and pretty obvious calculations. It's a good one also for investigating customized user interfaces. It's also a good one in a slightly more advanced frame of mind for looking into inferred iterative entity instances, in this case the payment, and how that works. So that's all about reference relationships, reverse relationships, and so forth. Well worth digging into. And as a whole, the project stands up really well because it's a demo that you can easily do. Most people will understand it. And it is, as I've shown you, very easy to extend. So that's it for this week. I hope you enjoy your own journey through the Loan Advisor example project. And of course, if you have any questions or any ideas, drop me a line and I'll see you soon.